My wife gets a couples counselor after being diagnosed with severe depression, and I think it's for our good until she tries to convince me to allow her to see other people. About 5 months ago, my wife, Sarah, was formally diagnosed with severe depression. It wasn't a shocking revelation, as I had suspected for a while, that my partner was not mentally well. This year, she seemed to be deeply mourning the loss of both her ex-boyfriend and her best friend. Both had once meant a lot to her, and she had been incredibly close to them. For context, before Sarah and I started dating, she and her ex were in a serious relationship for a long time. Then out of nowhere, he cheated on her with her best friend, someone she considered like a sister. This betrayal cut her deeply, marking the end of two of her most important relationships at once. After that, Sarah stayed single for a long time as she was afraid to trust anyone else. She needed time to deal with the pain and sort through her emotions. By the time I met her, she seemed to have made peace with it and was trying to move on. Still, the hurt from being betrayed lingered, making her cautious. We dated for 4 wonderful years, experiencing our ups and downs before deciding to get married. We had a beautiful wedding, surrounded by friends and family, the people who mattered most to us. The day was filled with joy and love. Initially, Sarah was an incredible partner, supportive, kind, understanding, and deeply caring. Marriage brought us even closer, and for years, we built a life together that felt strong and promising. However, earlier this year, tragedy struck. Sarah's ex-boyfriend and her former best friend died together in a car accident. The news hit her hard. For years, she had held on to resentment, but now, faced with their deaths, she was overwhelmed by grief. Something inside her seemed to shatter completely. Sarah sometimes shared how she wished she'd been able to resolve things with them. She expressed remorse for not reconciling or forgiving them fully, or at least speaking her piece. Knowing they were gone forever without the chance for closure weighed heavily on her heart. I reassured her that it was okay to feel this way. After all, they had been an important part of her life. However, she started blaming herself for not mending things before they passed away. You see, Sarah's best friend had reached out multiple times over the years, apologizing and trying to make amends. Yet Sarah couldn't bring herself to forgive her, which I don't blame her for. It's not every day your best friend sleeps with your partner. Even though the apology was there, the pain of the past was something Sarah couldn't just put aside. I comforted her by reminding her that what happened wasn't her fault and that she had every right to protect herself from further hurt. But no amount of reassurance seemed to help. Instead, Sarah's grief grew darker and harder to manage. She would spend hours lying in bed, often losing entire days watching TV or just staring blankly at the wall with a beer in hand. She began skipping work, calling in sick, or staying home without explanation. I could see she was sinking deeper into despair. I tried my best to encourage her to get out of the house and do things that might help her feel better, even just a little. I suggested small outings or anything that might offer distraction, but my words fell on deaf ears. Due to her lack of motivation to work, she lost her job, so I became the primary breadwinner. Slowly after this, my wife's behavior started changing in unsettling ways. Her mood became hard to predict, shifting between irritation and complete shutdown. She grew distant and defensive and would snap at me over the smallest things. On top of not working, she did nothing around the house anymore. As a result, household responsibilities piled up, leaving me carrying the weight of daily life without support while watching her drift further away. Even then, I still loved her. I thought maybe we could make it through this together. However, things worsened when Sarah started picking fights. If I stayed out too late, whether for work or unwinding with friends on a Friday night, I would come home to find her sitting on the couch waiting for me. She'd ask multiple questions about why I was out so late and who I was spending time with. Even if I answered honestly, she'd hint that she didn't believe me and accused me of possibly sleeping with coworkers or friends, saying that's why I was never home. Hearing these baseless accusations was both painful and offensive. No matter how much I reassured her that I would never cheat on her, she just didn't listen. As a result, we began having intense arguments where she demanded I come straight home after work. Even on weekends, she wanted me home with her, as if my time belonged solely to her. I started feeling suffocated, like the space I once had in our marriage was shrinking under the weight of her insecurities and anger. Things escalated when frustration spilled over physically in 2 alarming instances where she crossed lines I never thought she would cross. During one argument, she punched the sofa just above my head in a fit of anger, a violent display that left me unsettled. But the real breaking point came during another heated moment when she slapped me across the face. My wife was being very controlling. That moment clearly signaled that her grief and depression had morphed into something darker and more dangerous. Realizing my safety was at risk made me pack my bags, ready to leave and protect myself. Seeing me ready to walk out brought Sarah to desperation. She pleaded with me to stay, promising over and over that she'd change herself. I stood firm, telling her that if we were going to make this work, she'd need real help. She agreed, saying she'd go to a doctor if it meant saving our marriage. Reluctantly, I decided decided to give our relationship one last try, hoping she'd commit to getting help, something she clearly needed. This difficult decision, filled with doubt, stemmed from wanting to believe that the woman I'd fallen in love with could find her way back to herself and us. This was when Sarah was diagnosed with severe depression. She started taking medication weekly and began meditating to manage anger. Eventually, I saw some positive changes slowly emerging. The medication helped stabilize her mood, while making genuine efforts around the house gave me glimpses of who she used to be, the woman I'd fallen in love with, and it gave me hope. She showed more willingness to reconnect. However, a major issue remained: reluctance toward returning work or earning money. She hasn't held any job since diagnosis, a source of ongoing tension between us. I don't mind being the only one bringing in money, but want at least some effort from her every time I bring it up, hoping she'd consider something part-time or work from home. Roles she'd push back, insisting she's too low or weak for any job. This disagreement led us both yelling at each other. On one hand, I know she's struggling, but on the other hand, added financial strain alongside refusal. Even exploring options leaves me feeling frustrated, alone, carrying all responsibilities. Last month, Sarah surprised me by suggesting we see a couples counselor. Sharing our ongoing relationship issues made it clear we needed someone who could help us communicate more effectively while working through problems together. She then mentioned reaching out, already making an appointment, so all I'd have left is showing up. I agreed, thinking this counselor could strengthen our relationship while offering encouragement, support toward rebuilding life back toward normalcy. However, couples counseling has honestly made our relationship worse. During the sessions, Sarah admitted that a big part of her depression comes from the life we've built together. She feels like she hasn't been able to live the way she wanted since being married, which brought so much responsibility. She also mentioned that she still misses her ex-boyfriend sometimes, and wishes her best friend hadn't taken him with her. In fact, after the betrayal from her ex, she never really healed and feels like she just missed out on life. The more she shared during the sessions, the more I felt like a bystander in my own marriage. She said that she feels like she rushed into a marriage with me without taking the time to enjoy being single and without exploring what she wanted for herself. After her heartbreak from her ex-boyfriend, I was taken aback and reminded her that it was she who had proposed to me and that we had dated for a long time before we got married. So how was it that she felt rushed about it? The counselor interrupted me and encouraged my wife to continue to speak her truth, even if it hurt my feelings. Over the following sessions, Sarah began to confess to me in front of the counselor that she wanted a redo of her single life. However, since we were already married, she asked if I would consider allowing her to see other people while I stayed committed to our marriage. I scoffed at her question, hoping it was a joke. However, she argued that she deserved to experience both her single life and married life at the same time, and that it was only fair that she had the opportunity to explore and find herself before it was too late for her. I was appalled by her suggestion and didn't hold back in letting her know just how absurd and hurtful it was. I told her that her demand was outrageous and unacceptable. If she wanted to live like a single woman and explore, I could make that happen by leaving the marriage entirely. I wasn't about to stay in a relationship where I was expected to be loyal while she was free to act however she pleased with strangers. My words seemed to strike a nerve, and Sarah became furious. She shot back, claiming that I could never understand her feelings because, unlike her, I'd been with multiple people before we got together. I calmly reminded her that I'd only had 2 previous relationships before hers, both serious, meaningful commitments that simply hadn't worked out. It hurt that she would try to use my past against me, as if my experiences somehow made me less entitled to expect commitment in our marriage. I told her that if she felt so strongly about living a single life, she should have thought about that before we walked down the aisle. I reminded her that I had made sacrifices for our relationship this year especially. I had been the one holding down our home, supporting her financially and emotionally through her depression, all because I believed in our marriage and in her. But now she was making unreasonable demands. It was as if she wanted the security and stability I provided without honoring the commitment that came with it. I couldn't allow that. I told her firmly that she couldn't have it both ways. She needed to make a choice. It was either a committed life with me or a single life without me. She couldn't keep me in limbo, expecting me to bend to her wishes while she kept one foot out the door. Since that confrontation in front of our counselor, Sarah has been sulking around the house, acting as if I'm the one who's being unreasonable. She's repeatedly tried to convince me that I'm being too harsh and even selfish for refusing to let her have some fun. She keeps insisting that if I truly loved her, I'd be more open-minded and supportive of her desire to explore. Her attempts to guilt me into agreeing make it clear that she still doesn't understand or refuses to understand how disrespectful and unfair her request is. But I'm standing firm. I've tried to be compassionate, understanding, and supportive of her through the ups and downs of her depression, but there are boundaries I won't compromise on. I don't believe that being open-minded means sacrificing my own self-respect and the integrity of our marriage. I refuse to let her manipulate me into thinking that I'm the one in the wrong. So Ada for refusing my wife permission to see other people while we're still married. Update 1 for everyone wondering if Sarah might already be cheating and using this as a way to justify her behavior. I honestly don't think that's the case. My wife barely leaves the house. She's constantly around, either watching TV all day or just idling in her own thoughts. Ironically, if she were having an affair, at least I'd have clarity and a straightforward reason to walk away. Yes, it would hurt, but at least I'd know she could move on without me. Instead, I'm left dealing with this painful and confusing situation. As for everyone wondering why Sarah's ex-boyfriend and best friend's death affected her so much all of a sudden, I'm none the wiser, but I'm just guessing it might have given her a reality check. These were people she knew well, and maybe losing them so unexpectedly made her spiral. I'm not entirely sure, but I've never really understood why it hit her so hard, or why she thinks destroying our marriage and sleeping around will somehow fix this depression. As one commenter pointed out under my post, maybe Sarah has never really loved me throughout our marriage. Maybe she just saw me as a safety net, somewhat reliable and loyal after her relationship with her ex. And like that, maybe she still has unresolved feelings for him and now regrets not giving things a chance with him. Whatever the case, it's ridiculous that my wife now wants an open relationship, something I never would have expected as I'm deeply committed to monogamy. If she had ever hinted at wanting this kind of arrangement before, I would never have married her in the first place. This sudden shift feels like a complete betrayal of the life and values we built together. The reason I haven't already left is that I genuinely worry about her mental health. She has been my partner for so long, for years. It really felt like it was just us against the world. She was never this mean or selfish. She never raised a hand on me or yelled at me. When she began to change so drastically after the tragic accident involving her ex-boyfriend and best friend, I told myself it was just a phase, that she'd find her way back in time. I wanted to believe that the woman I fell in love with was still there, just buried under all the grief and pain. But now, after everything that's happened, I finally accepted it's time for me to choose myself. This marriage has clearly come to an end. It's been 2 weeks since my last update. I've taken the next step for myself and reached out privately to a lawyer to start the divorce process. Sarah and I own our house together and we have a joint account, but given she's still unemployed and our financial situation is already strained, I needed first to secure my assets before moving forward with divorce papers. Once everything is finalized with my lawyer, I was preparing myself to break the bad news to Sarah when yesterday crossed a line I simply couldn't ignore anymore. I realized I couldn't keep my mouth shut any longer. We were at Sarah's sister's house for a family lunch. Their family is incredibly kind to me, and we've always had a good relationship, so I looked forward to meeting them all. For context, her family knows we've been having some issues in our marriage, but no one knows the whole story. During lunch, I noticed Sarah continuously drinking. Now, she's been strongly discouraged from drinking because of ongoing medications for depression, so seeing her with whiskey immediately raised red flags for me. When I gently tried talking about it with her, she scoffed at me, then went right back drinking. I felt really disrespected, so left her alone. Later during dinner, as everyone chatted about their lives, Sarah's mother asked how things were going between us. In discussing us along with how my work was going, I mentioned we had been attending couples counseling, and Sarah still needed work through issues. I continued talking about my work when Sarah interrupted me with something completely unexpected. She said that her depression could be cured faster if her husband truly understood what she really wanted in life. Her mother, visibly concerned, asked what she meant by that. That's when Sarah openly declared in front of everyone, "My husband is why my life is so miserable." The room fell silent. Everyone stopped eating and just stared at her in confusion. It was clear to all of us that she was drunk by this point. Sarah proceeded to explain how I had refused to give her what she wanted and accused me of being a conservative, insecure, and possessive husband who made her feel suffocated. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. She was twisting the narrative and putting the blame solely on me. Her sister immediately asked her why she was talking about me in such a way, and since we were close, she looked furious at her sister. The rest of her family sat in stunned silence, clearly shocked by her harsh accusations. I felt humiliated and betrayed sitting there listening to her, as she continued explaining to everyone that all I wanted was a small thing from her, but that I refused to give it to her only out of my stubbornness. Hearing this, I snapped. The way she was trying to paint me as the villain in front of her family was so hurtful. I turned to Sarah and demanded to know why she wasn't being honest with her family and giving them the entire truth about what she actually wanted from me. I looked at her family, and with all the frustration and pain I'd been holding in, I told them exactly what Sarah had asked of me, how she wanted to explore other relationships, basically sleep around with strangers while I stayed loyal to her, and how she expected me to continue being a supportive husband while she enjoyed her life unburdened. I laid it all out, revealing the truth she had been hiding. Her family was stunned. Her mother asked Sarah if this was really what she was asking of me, and then her father, who had always been kind to me, scolded her for being so ridiculous and asked if she had truly lost her mind. Sarah, however, was still trying to justify herself. She insisted that everyone's marriage goes through a stalemate and believed this solution she proposed would help solve the issues in our marriage. Sarah justified that this was only temporary and that I should feel lucky that she was even asking for permission when there were so many women who simply cheated on their husbands without anyone ever finding out. I yelled at her, telling her that I was sick of her acting this way, trying to justify her sick excuses and selfish behavior. It was a breaking point for me. I announced in front of everyone that I was done with her. I couldn't keep fighting for a marriage that she no longer valued. I told her flat out that our marriage was over and that I would be sending her the divorce papers. Her face looked dumbfounded, like she couldn't believe what was happening. She slowly blinked and just stared at my face. I handed her my lawyer's card and told her I would be moving out that very day. If she wanted to talk about the divorce, she could contact my lawyer. Her parents, understandably concerned, tried to console me, telling me that Sarah was probably acting this way because of her medication, that she didn't really know what she was saying or doing. They seemed to be looking for a way to excuse her behavior, trying to explain it away as just a temporary lapse caused by her depression and the smoking. But I told them their daughter was nothing but a loser who had been dragging me down for the past several months with her talk of depression and grief. There was no more waiting, no more hoping things would change. I had given everything I could to this relationship when she had only disrespected me time and time again. This time, I was going to put myself first. Sarah tried to meekly argue that I couldn't just walk out of our marriage over something as silly as this, and that we needed to go back to counseling to work things out. I laughed bitterly at her suggestion. Shaking my head, I told her that she absolutely needed a counselor, but that didn't mean I did. I wasn't crazy or unwell like her. I wasn't the one going around making reckless, selfish demands or blaming my partner for my own poor choices. I made it clear that I would not waste any more of my time trying to fix a marriage that I no longer wanted to fix. Without saying another word, I walked out of her sister's house and headed straight home, where I began packing. By the time Sarah finally got home in an Uber, frantically calling out my name, I was already ready to leave when she arrived. She immediately tried the same old begging tactic again, pleading with me, insisting we could work through this hiccup in our marriage. She even tried to hold onto my luggage as a way to prevent me from walking out, but I informed her that if she stopped me from leaving, then I would call 911 on her and make our divorce process even more difficult for her. I asked her firmly not to stop me from walking out with my things, and begrudgingly she let me. I quickly packed up my stuff and left to stay at a motel. Update 3. Thank you everyone for your comments. I feel much better after reading them ever since that day. I'm currently living out of a motel. Sarah has been sending me multiple voicemails. One moment she's accusing me of being heartless, telling me I'm ruining everything, and the next she's apologizing for her behavior, expressing how sorry she is for what she's done. It's been a constant emotional roller coaster, and it's clear she's trying to manipulate the situation, playing on my emotions to get me to reconsider. But at this point, I'm not giving in. Her words don't change the fact that I've made a decision based on the person she's become, and I'm not going back to the way things were. I've heard enough excuses and false promises. I need to focus on moving forward and healing from everything that's happened to clear up any confusion once and for all. I'm not leaving my ex because of her depression. I have immense respect for people going through mental health conditions. Depression is a serious struggle, and I do not want to minimize it. However, when it comes to my relationship with my ex, I'm just exhausted because of her lack of accountability. She's constantly used her depression as an excuse to demand whatever she wants from me. This is not fair. I've given more than enough of myself trying to help her, but there comes a point where no single person can carry all this weight alone. Since leaving her, I've felt much better. I've been able to focus on myself, and being away from her has lessened my anxiety as well. It's heartbreaking to break my marriage, but I have to walk away from my own mental and emotional health. Update 4. It's been 5 months since my last update. Nothing was finalized until this month. Sarah and I are officially divorced, and I can finally say I'm a free man. We split the proceeds from the sale of our house equally, thankfully. We didn't have any major liabilities or children, so there were no alimony payments involved. This day didn't come easily. There were countless moments when Sarah and her family tried everything they could to change my mind, to convince me to stay, to believe things could somehow go back to normal. Her mother came several times after I'd moved out. During the divorce proceedings, she constantly tried guilt-tripping me into staying with Sarah. She kept saying that Sarah needed a supportive partner like me, that it was my duty because of our marriage vows. At first, I tried being polite, but as she kept coming back, I became more frustrated with her approach. Finally, during one visit, I decided to be honest with Sarah had once slapped me in anger and that I should have left long before then. I asked if she'd have stayed if it were happening in her own marriage. Despite everything, I'd stayed. Even though Sarah didn't deserve my forgiveness, she was completely shocked by what I'd said, and after that, she never came back again. During the divorce proceedings, I've noticed Sarah has gone even deeper into depression, and honestly, she looks worse than before. I hope her family gets her the right help. Sarah's sister is the only one who believes I've done the right thing by leaving their sister. She and I've continued remaining friends. Currently, I've finally moved into a place of my my own. Honestly, as a newly divorced man, it feels liberating being free from my ex. I'm proud of myself for trusting my instincts, choosing leaving such a toxic relationship before things spiraled further. Now I wake up when I want with no one answering. I can focus on my career without distractions and spend time with coworkers, friends, guilt-free. I come go as please, and it's a feeling I've not had in a long time. For first time in a while, I feel like I'm truly living for myself again, without someone else's sadness demands dragging down, and that's worth everything.